The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. We're coming to you live from Salem, New Hampshire today, and we have a very special guest. We actually have two very special guests. One of them is laying at my feet. She was one of our clients from 2021, but we're inviting on Kristin Cormier today, who was a client of ours last year, and she is doing a great job with Daisy, and we just kind of wanted to tell her story a little bit. So first, we're going to start with the Quirky Tip of the day. Scott squeaked the pig. That's always a good sign. And Kristin's going to give you guys the tip because she came up with it. We're getting a little lazy on the tips, honestly. It's pretty much like 30 seconds before we're live. We're like, what's the tip? So Kristin's doing it today.
Yeah, well, so if for other folks out there like us who you're struggling with training your pet and maybe you've been shopping different trainers, if something doesn't feel right, you feel like it's not working with your pet, it's not. And keep looking, preferably Scott and Jess. But
don't ship your dogs to us, please.
But that if your instinct is telling you something, it's correct. You know your dog.
Yeah,
You know.
and you want to have something that works, right? Like that's why you guys sought out trainers. So tell me a little bit. Scott went to the first eval, and I didn't meet Daisy. So tell me just a little bit about that. And Kristin's husband's name is Mike, if we reference him, and their son is Grayson. So if we throw those names around, that's who we're talking about. And the dog is a English golden, cream golden, whatever you want to call it, named Daisy, and she's laying at my feet calmly. So when you guys had Scott out for that initial evaluation, walk us through that a little bit, maybe how you found him, how that went, everything else.
Yeah, so we found him through our neighbor,
Okay.
who had also done a board and train with you guys. And so we live in an apartment complex, and there's like 75 or 80 dogs. And, everyone you ask, they're sending their dog to a different place, different daycare, whatever. But when our close friends referred us, and we had seen such a change in their dog. And so when Scott walked in, we all breathed a sigh of relief, and we were... We've been thankful ever since, but we didn't know what to expect. We had gone to another facility for puppy training, and gotten some feedback that was not helpful, and frightening. And because we didn't have an aggressive dog, we didn't know if we had a problem.
Yeah.
We just had a dog that seemed really nervous and didn't want to do anything. And her world became so small. And after 1 hour with Scott, just taking a walk outside with a different collar and some very minimal pointers, our lives changed from that first hour. And we were like, we're sending her. Like, he went over all the options that were available, and he wasn't out the door, and we're like, yeah, we're doing.
Yeah. What do you remember about that first?
I remember
meeting?
that Daisy was very fearful. And you were, I think, if I remember correctly, you said the only time that she really goes out of the apartment is just to pee and back in. That's kind of where you were at. You were not really getting her out of the house for walks or anything because she was so reactive or controlled by her fear, where she was darting and everything was making her, a nervous wreck. And so I said we took her outside and started just tried to get her to walk on a leash and giving her a lot of direction and putting some control on her. And she kind of rose to the occasion pretty quickly. She started working with me, and then she worked with you a little bit before I left. And it was nice to see that by just giving her some direction and letting her know, to work within certain parameters, she started to settle in pretty quick, I think.
Well, and I don't know if I was in the car or you called me after, but I remember, and I don't know if you said this or not, but Scott goes, the lady told me that it was the longest the dog had ever been outside.
Yeah, no, it really was.
Yeah, and that was extreme. Like, we're talking about an hour eval, and I don't remember what time of year it was that he came, but it was kind of just like go out to go pee and then drag back, right?
She was a year old at the time. We were literally outside 30 seconds, maybe.
Yeah.
She would hear a leaf could pass by. We're not talking the fireworks and thunderstorm kind of fear. We're talking
kind of like a global fear almost that she had of everything.
A FedEx truck would drive by. not even close to us.
Yeah.
A motorcycle 3 miles in the distance.
And she had gotten away from you, you told me, at one point.
Yes.
And it was a nightmare trying to get her back. She was afraid of everything and running all over the place.
Right. And so we had all this guilt after that, thinking that, like, did that traumatize her even more? And now there's a point of no return. And we had no idea. We had just all this guilt. And you get a dog, a golden retriever, that you hear. This is our first animal, our first dog. We have 2 cats. That, everyone says, so easy, that's so trainable. Yeah. So we thought this was kind of like a plug and play,
Walk in the park,
pet, and we thought, like, we could teach her whatever and she'll just learn it. And then that was not the case at all. And what, Scott kind of reassured us of is that no, she can be trained.
Yeah.
It's just, and we were like, oh, thank you. Like, we didn't know. We thought we were like, just.
Well, and it's a long journey. She's a year at the time. Theoretically, best case scenario, she lives 15 plus. You're thinking, oh my God, 14 more years. And your son, you have a 6-year-old son, is he 6?
He's 5.
He's 5, yeah. So that's almost as long as their son would be home too. Right. It's like, oh my gosh, we have the son, we have the dog. Like, there's a lot of stress here for that amount of time. Yes. And can you talk about grooming a little bit too? Because grooming was a struggle the first year of her life, right?
Yeah, we had actually even gotten to the point where we had to cut out some mats behind her ears and everything, because it was just everything was so traumatic for her.
Yeah.
And we went to the groomer we had shopped around because we had different feedback again, and some weren't comfortable with her because she would keep going to the bathroom and the bathtub, and they didn't like that. And stuff that just happens, and even just getting her in the door. I was like, well, I got her in the door, but it was not graceful. Yeah. It was messy.
It was an accomplishment.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't still happy about it because I thought I was so unsure, and we were so unsure that we're like, are we traumatizing her more? Yeah. By trying to do these things that she needs now. Going to the vet, they were like, oh no, she just needs to come right in, and she's like, pulling, and we had to make
pooping
sure that
throughout the whole
office.
Thing. Yeah, exactly.
And the amount of poop I had to clean up in stores just to get to the back of the store where the groomer was or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that stress really weighed on her heavily. And I noticed that when she came in too. And the clients that we get and the dogs that come in, there's varying levels of, care that the coats need and everything else. So, you have a dog with a short little coat, like a whippity kind of coat. Yeah, fine. It doesn't really matter. But some of these dogs with extensive coats that have either fought handling from the owners or from groomers or something else, it can get to be a real pain in the butt. And her coat condition wasn't necessarily great. And you had her on a higher quality food. What do you have her on, the Farmer's Dog?
She's on Farmer's Dog
now.
So
they had her on like a pre-made raw type of situation to try to help with the immune system there. She had some autoimmune issues that we can talk about. And it was just kind of like, I'm looking at this dog and I'm like, geez, why don't they brush her? Or why don't they take her to the, groomer to get bathed? And within like 2 days, I realized why, because there was this extreme fear of everything. And it was just a process getting her out the door to go to the bathroom and come back in like you guys were experiencing. So I would say for us, the transformation kind of happened within that first week where it was just like, we're just going to deal and we're just going to go places. And then everything else kind of started falling into place. But we took her, I would say, at least for 2 or 3 baths because I knew that, okay, maybe this will be a thing. And we brought her to a location where we could load her into a tub so she would get out and about, because the more we got her out and about, the better she was. And she hadn't been out and about much, not to your detriment. Like that wasn't your failing. It was hard to get her out.
Yeah.
And
it was hard to get her to the
doing
car.
everything work. It's doing everything right is a lot of work. I mean, controlling her and having
keeping
a plan.
her, only losing her once was like a feat for me as far as I'm concerned. Like she's a hard dog just to hold on the leash.
She's strong enough that if she darts out, she could pull you down or just pull that leash out of your hand and all that kind of stuff. And you wanted your son to be able to walk her and that kind of stuff, which he was on the return. I remember that was really cool.
Yeah, and he knows all the commands now, when she's coming out of the crate. And, and he's, he's helping feeding her. And I mean, all of that. Skipping ahead. We're kind of skipping ahead to the end result, but we didn't know the amount of stress that we were feeling from her in her condition until she left for 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when she came back, I mean, it was just so heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I was there, and I came to the return. I don't come to the returns that frequently. I'm normally home with the dogs, and Scott's out and about on the road, but like this was a special case for us, and we wanted it to go as smoothly as possible for them. And really, the bottom line is like, what Kristin said is so true. You don't realize how much stress there is until the dog's removed. And there's a lot going on in the world. We had the pandemic. Like, there was a lot going on at that time, 6 to 8 months ago, that you don't necessarily know where your stress is coming from. But if it is coming from your dog and you can alleviate some of that stress, like, great, that's really important. And that's part of why we invited Kristin on today, because we want to give people hope. Some of you who are listening who are like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I'm hitting my head against the wall. That maybe your stress level can get a lot better. I mean, that's possible.
Yeah, we had lived with it for so long. We thought that was normal.
Yeah.
We thought this was how her whole life was going to be.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful for everybody that it's not.
Well, and, I will add that, dogs that have, real extreme behavior, people see the biggest turnaround because it's so bad in the other direction that when it gets even just to a baseline, that's a huge improvement, And when people call me and say, oh, my dog is great, we just want to polish up a few things, I get concerned because they're telling me their dog does everything great already. Nothing's perfect. It doesn't matter how long I have a dog. If they want, that dog to come every time when called, I tell them I can't promise that, and you shouldn't expect a perfect dog. If you evaluate the situation before you take your dog off leash, assuming you have a dog that will come when called, because if there's some things there that your dog has not seen before, you may want to reconsider just letting them fly and see what happens and hope for the best,
And like you guys know, it's not just you get a dog back and, okay, it's on autopilot, here we go. There's some follow-up on the other end. And you and Mike and Grayson, all three of you, have really stepped up to help with that. All right, we're going to go to break super quick. And when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Kristin's holistic care and what Daisy looked like on the other end of boot camp.
Does your dog lack self-control? Are you looking for some answers? Would you like your dog to be calmer? Does your dog lack confidence? Canine Mindshift. Enroll in a free course today. Simply go to caninemindshift.com. That's caninemindshift.com.
All right, we're back with Kristin and Daisy, and most importantly, my co-host Scott. He sometimes feels left out, especially when we have a guest. Him and his cigar, we couldn't do it without him.
I'm just laying low. Staying out of trouble.
I wanted to talk a little bit about Kristin's journey here, because you were seeing a holistic vet even before you came and found us, right?
Yes.
And was that your own doing, or did your Western vet recommend that? How did that happen?
Yeah, so we have two cats, and they go to I guess Western, would that be? Yeah,
sure,
non-holistic.
Traditional, yeah.
Yeah, and but when we got Daisy from a breeder, they strongly encouraged holistic vet. So even before we had her in her first 8 weeks of life, we were already researching that because that was the advice of the breeder. And this breeder, she's from West Virginia, so they're not in our area. We really had to do a lot of research. Yeah. And we found one in Exeter, New Hampshire, and our experience has been great because I feel like we're actually being educated with her care more than we are, say, with our cats, because we're understanding the whys behind what she's doing and how she, just how she can accept the rabies vaccine better, her body can absorb better, just things like that what we're learning, and also how not everything is just treated with a pill. And that was different for us too, that, there's different tactics and, because we thought her tummy troubles was from that she had just the worst stomach in the world. And this was going to be her destiny, was that she was going to have diarrhea for the rest of her life.
Well, and let's touch on that a little bit. So we got her about a year. Scott came when she was about a year old. But you had a lot of GI struggles, correct?
A ton, almost constantly.
And there was some coat stuff going on. Was she on Canine Immune when she came in from Standard Process? I can't remember.
Yes, she was.
She was already on like an autoimmune kind of supplement that was combating some of these issues. Yeah. And the stool really never improved, right? I mean, there was never a time
when she would go on, I forget whatever medication.
Oh, metronidazole.
Yes, that. It would clear up.
Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks after.
Yeah. So I don't know how long she's been home, how many months, but how's her stool been since she's returned, just for our own heads?
It's been amazing. I would say No more. We have not had diarrhea.
Okay.
I would say it's mostly hard.
Yeah.
And then the worst it gets is soft.
Okay, so it's not just full-on diarrhea anymore. And that wasn't a big
No.
issue. Like, it was a stressful situation that you guys were dealing with.
Yep.
And I personally dealt with that also, because we had Daisy, she was 2 weeks? She came for 2 weeks? Okay, so I was having a lot of tummy issues too. And, there was just stress getting outside, being in a new environment, everything else. So I put her on bland, and I still saw loose stool just being on a bland diet, just based on visits and, outings and everything else. So I was like, okay, this is stress. And then as soon as things started getting more consistent where, okay, she can get in the car, she can go on an outing, she can walk around Home Depot and look somewhat like a normal dog, and I'm not meaning to be rude to her, but I mean, she was extreme, like darting everywhere, pulling all her might, and she's probably 40-something pounds, 40, 50 pounds?
She's 46.
Yeah, so 46 pounds that wants to go is like a lot. It's to go in Home Depot. You don't want to be dragging that around. So I had seen that change, I would say probably to the 7 to 10 day mark where I'm like, all right, we're solid. She's back on the food that she came in on, and it was just consistent. And I think part of that was just getting over this hump where she was so afraid to be out in the world. And we truly did see this. Like, she was one of our standout clients, I would say, from 2021 and probably our whole career. It was so extreme for her to get out in the world that once she finally was out in the world and just dealing in the world, and it wasn't as terrible as she thought it was, I would say the stool got better right around then.
Yeah. And one thing I really appreciate about you and Mark and Grayson, Mike, I'm sorry, is just that you didn't second guess everything we told you. And we have a lot of not a lot, but we have a fair amount of clients that when we, on the other end, when we return the dog and we say, you need to be doing crating and you need to do this and you need to do that, we have the dog's best interest in mind. It's not that we don't want people to enjoy their dog, but we know the dog needs a certain amount of kind of emotional rehabilitation to get them to just be calm within their own skin. And people start second guessing everything. They don't want to feed the food we recommend. They don't get the crate that we tell them to get, just because they really don't want to. It's not that they don't trust us. They don't want to do these things. They don't feel good about putting a dog in a crate. And you guys said, whatever we got to do, we'll do it. We need this dog to be happy, healthy. We want our son to enjoy this dog. We want to enjoy the dog. And just like, that's just the way you guys work, because when you said the breeder recommended a holistic vet, you guys were all over that. A lot of people would say, oh, yeah, but we have our own vet, thanks. We have someone right down the street we'll use. Yeah. But you're trying to do things that's best for the dog based on what the breeder said and then based on what we said. And your dog is much better.
Yes.
You're doing a good job.
It's nice. It's nice because I tell people,
it's not easy though.
When people pay me money, and then they start telling me about, well, I researched this and I researched that. I tell them, you've paid me now to be the professional, so stop researching and follow what I'm recommending here. That's why you're paying me. Right. You don't need to continue searching anymore. Right. If what I'm doing for you isn't working, then you can go find another trainer and see if it works better with somebody else. But at least give me and the dog that time where you're just going to follow one method. You're not going to second guess anything and then see how it goes, Well,
and the funny thing, and this happened when we had our facility in Salisbury, ironically, because Kristin's in that area as well. What Scott did, how long have you been doing this, babe? 20 years? 15, 20 years? What Scott did 20 years ago, maybe, for boot camps, really doesn't even look the same as what we do now, because we have evolved so much in what the dogs need. The dogs have become more extreme. Yeah, the owners are interacting with the dogs differently. So, even this, cookie cutter process, it's not what Scott was doing when he first learned to train dogs or his first mentors. We are catering each dog and each setup to what will work best for the owners, and that's part of the reason I wanted to go back on the return. And I want to talk about this stepping on the leash exercise, because I'm doing this right now with Daisy. Do you guys still do this?
Yes.
Okay. And in what context, where are you doing this type of exercise for her?
Yeah. So we're doing it when, like you said, we have a 5-year-old full of energy. Sometimes he can get a little excited and,
very bright kid.
Yeah.
He gave us a green pumpkin for Halloween.
I liked him right away. He's the only normal one in the house.
Scott connects well with the kids. He's always in with the kids.
Yeah, and so we have. There have been times where we had company over, and that's getting our son excited, and so then the dog's getting excited, and we've put the leash and just sat with her like that, and that it gives her something to. it's like she doesn't have to think about anything anymore.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, this is what I'm doing now. And then it calms her right down. And just recently I did it when we went to a routine visit at the vet just a couple of weeks ago. You know, we walked in, she was like, she's familiar, but it's like this still like, well, what's lurking around the corner?
Yeah.
But she's still happier. You know, there's still a change, but then there's still this, it still lives in her a little bit. And I just sat down in the waiting room. It wasn't our turn yet. I sat down, I put the leash down, and she just immediately laid. And now, you know, it's immediate. And I could just see her breathing regularly.
Yeah, she does kind of decompress. And that's why I mentioned it, because she's doing a great job here. And there's a bunch of wires and stuff under the desk that, you know, she could be scattering around and pulling out. And then one of us you can't hear and everything. So, you know, I mean, we didn't want her to be on a chair the whole time. I will pick her up here before we close, just so you guys can see how cute little Daisy is. But, you know, it depends on the dog. I don't want a dog to be on the podcast and be stressed out. When we had little Buddy, the big freaking bulldog on the podcast, we're trying to hold up the bed. Like, it depends on the dog. But she is here laying comfortably at my feet. And it is important to note, because it does kind of give her an automatic exercise to decompress in. And I think what was most noteworthy to us and what made us feel really good was the follow-up you gave us about her recent vet visit compared to her previous vet visits.
It's so nice to get those texts.
Is it good?
Anytime you want to send great texts to me, just go right ahead.
But, I mean, her old vet visits weren't as smooth, it seemed.
They were not. The whole staff knew it. They were fine with her. They still loved her and everything, and they worked with her, and they're great. And they do know of you guys, and so they even asked, "Are you still with Scott and Jess?" We're like, "Oh, yep, we're never leaving." You know, even if they want us to. And but you know, even the vet, you know, herself, she was like, "This is a different Daisy," and she's, you know, and just to see how she responded to getting a vaccine, and then how she clipped her nails, and she said how she's like, nail clipping is the most traumatic thing for dogs, and I didn't even realize that. And she's like, that was maybe one of the best dogs I had, you know, in 2021 with a nail clipping. And
That's kind of scary to think about.
And it's only February, you know, so, but. You know, that's the work that we've been doing.
Yeah,
but
it's
it
paying
carries
off.
over, right?
And you're keeping up with it. Like Scott said, you're not just like, okay, everything's fixed, let's throw the crate away, we never have to step on the leash again. Like, you're leaning into what worked, and it's continuing to work for you. And all we want is more progress for them moving forward, right? And there was a previous groomer in the same town. We know the people that work there and everything else. I actually just got Kristin a gift certificate to go there and groom Daisy there. And like previously that didn't work out. And I went there as a test run to see how it went. And I almost cried. I mean, really, it was like poetic. She's like jumping in the tub on her own. One of my dear friends had just flown in actually as a surprise and got to see the dog, because I had been talking about Daisy while we had her. I'm like, I'm concerned. Like, this is a lot. And she's in a public place getting ready to get, you know, a grooming eval. And it was almost poetic. And that is to your credit for sure, but also to Daisy's. Daisy really does have it in her to be a good girl. And I think she wants to feel normal. I think we all want to feel normal in some way.
She does. I think that we comment on this a lot, especially at night after our son goes to bed, and then Daisy's the baby, you know, and she'll squeeze on the couch between Mike and I. And, you know, she really just wants to be part of the pack.
Yeah.
And I think that's all she ever wants.
Yeah.
And now she can do that and be a productive member of our pack, you know, and not this like neurotic. And then we're responding, and then we're all just, you know,
hysterical.
having a bad time. And, you know, and like we rearranged our whole living room for the crate, you know, and I ordered we got rid of 2 recliners, and so that we could have it. And now the crate is an end table.
Custom crate designer came in,
and we got this wood topper for it, and you know, because we're in an apartment, we had to make it work. And when Scott said get this size, I'm like, okay. Ordered, you know, it's coming. And because we had donated our first one because it did, you know, we couldn't get her in it.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. And that isn't your fault. She doesn't want to go in a crate. She's crying to get out of a crate. You feel like terrible humans. Your 5-year-old's looking at you like, why does the dog have to be in the crate? It's so sad. Like, it's stressful. It is a process. But I mean, really, we are really proud of you and Mike and Grace, and Daisy is doing a great job. Do you have anything else to share on the situation that we haven't touched on?
Well, I would say that, you know, Daisy had a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear that you're working through. We all work through together, along with, you know, the basic obedience. But there's a lot of people out there that have dogs that don't have a lot of fear. They don't have a lot of anxiety. They just need basic obedience, and they're just poorly behaved because they don't know any better, not because they're controlled by fear. But even with that situation, if you do a board and train, or you do training and the dogs become well trained, the same as this. If you don't maintain that stuff on a regular basis, it's going to slip away. You're going to have the crazy back. So whether it's stepping on a leash and little behavior modification techniques to ward off anxiety, you need to be maintaining your criteria for whatever behaviors that you want to maintain moving forward, whether it's a come when called or a down stay, those kind of things. Because typically, as soon as something is fixed or acceptable, there's so much going on in our lives that we just immediately shift to the next fire we have to put out.
Yeah.
And dogs are something that they always need a touch from a behavioral obedience side, not just a caress and a lot of love.
And I would
you
say,
need to
too,
continue to give them a little bit of structure.
I would say with that point, reverting back to the foundation, right? Like if something fell apart, go back to how it was foundationally taught or how you foundationally learned it to build back up. And I'm going to give Kristin kudos again here that what Scott said is totally true, but it also has to do with the owner like looking at the dog's behavior. And you're really good about doing that. Like you knew even before we came, okay, when people come over and Grayson starts escalating, then the dog starts escalating. Like you're putting two and two together. Is this situation productive for my dog? Did she appear more confident in this situation? You're observing her behavior, which is helping her versus just being the person that holds the leash and acting like, okay, we're going here, we're doing this, everything else, you know? So that observing the owner being present with what's happening and did it go well or did it actually not go well and did it go the wrong way is a big part of the success too. You have to be observing constantly and making sure that it's heading in the right direction and continuing to.
Yeah, and I know that the training and all of this with Daisy has been I would say a fairly significant investment monetarily for you guys to get into this whole thing. Mm-hmm. But that's not why you follow through. You follow through because of the dog.
Right.
And I say that when you said, when I texted you a crate and said, this is the crate she needs, and you just bought it, I do that kind of stuff on a fairly regular basis with people, and they just don't respond. Did you get that crate yet? Oh. It's like crickets. There's no response. And I know they're telling me by not responding that they're not comfortable getting a crate, getting this dog in a crate. And that has everything to do with how well this dog does moving in the future. Right. If they're not going to be following these protocols, they're going to have trouble, you know? Yeah. So, and it doesn't mean she has to live in a crate the rest of her life. She may get to a point where you're not using a crate anymore down the road.
It's just some downtime, similar to what you see with your son, right? Yes. Like, if it's just fun all the time and we're just going on play dates and going to daycare and then the grandparents are coming over with sugar, like, it's chaotic for everybody.
Yeah, most dogs, when people get rid of the crate because the housebreaking is good, the dog's not destroying anything anymore, the dogs are totally bummed out. They're like, where the hell's my crate? They want to get away from the humans. You know, they just need a break from us, and they want to go in their crate, and now that's gone because it took up floor space. Right. That's usually why people get rid of them.
That's why you get the topper for it.
Yeah.
So it's
it looks furniture.
You make it into an island.
Her whole place is all cute and interior designed up. But that downtime, I would say, doesn't only help Grayson, but it helps Daisy too, right?
Yes, it does, because it kind of just takes her out of an equation that could make her nervous. Yeah. Or she's like, well, I want to eat that. I want to eat that toy. But now that's gone, and she's like, I'll just take a nap. Yeah. And that she doesn't have to worry about what am I supposed to be doing, because that's what you could see that in her all the time before.
And it's almost to us the way like they're trying to alleviate that anxiety, right? Like, oh my God, maybe if I get back inside, I'll feel better. Maybe if I swallow this toy, I'll feel better. Yeah. Maybe if I get pet over here, I'll feel better. Maybe if I go run into this room and lay under the bed, I'll feel better. And they're literally trying to self-soothe. And I get that. Like, if you're a person that can get low and stuff, like, how do I feel better? What can I do to get myself to feel better? But when that anxiety is manifesting itself in that way, it's almost like there's no rhyme or reason for any choice she's making. Yeah. She's almost not even in control anymore.
Right.
I did that last night with cannoli chips.
No control.
By the time I went to bed, I had a stomach ache. I know. Like, oh my God, why did I do that to myself?
Yeah. Well, it's like what you said a few weeks ago, the control creates calm. Yeah. And that is our lifestyle now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is really working out well. And like, I just philosophically, just to end on this, I mean, did you guys feel comfortable as far as on the return and when we were both there, like, do you feel like what you're doing with Daisy is productive? Do you guys have moments of talking like, is this the wrong thing? Is it not? And we're totally open. Like, I want you to be honest, but do you have moments where you're concerned about how she's feeling because of the training, or if she's on the bed and she has to stay on the bed, like making her hold that criteria? Does that make sense?
I would say in the beginning we did, because we didn't know, what we should be feeling. And then, Scott kind of put it so clearly to us is, don't worry about how she's feeling. Don't impose those human emotions onto Daisy. And so we just purposely don't enter those thoughts anymore. And that we're just like, no, this is what is right for her. Yeah. We seeked the help from experts that told us this is what is good for her. And now we see the benefit. We see it, you know. And
and you were going through that learning stage, but Scott's right. Like, we don't know what the dogs are feeling. We barely know what the 5-year-olds are feeling. You can talk to Grayson, but maybe whatever emotions he's explaining aren't really what he's feeling. Right. You know what I mean? And we can't make a backstory, or we can't create a scenario that the dog lives in, because we really don't know where the dog's coming from. But you can see point A and point B, I would say.
Yeah, no, and I think that you want to have an emotionally healthy family and household. That's obvious.
Yes.
So you're willing to do whatever it takes to establish some calmness among not only the dog, but your son, your husband.
Yes.
You just want to have a calm environment where people aren't all nuts.
Right.
We're the same way. We don't want to have a nutty household.
We got enough nuts between the two of us.
when we do have a lot of instability within the house, and typically that's from maybe a pet dog that comes. It's tough. And we need to get them all. Our dogs
She was
suffer.
asleep,
If
actually.
we have a dog come in that is really fearful and anxious, our dogs start getting a little bit stressed. Like, what's up with this dog? What's wrong with you, buddy?
Yeah,
oh
because
God, they're probably still recovering from Daisy.
But we all, no. Well, Daisy's one of our good ones. But we all feel the energy, right? And I had to wake her up right now. She was honestly sleeping at my feet. And this isn't easy. We come into a cigar studio, we take a left, we go upstairs. She met our producer. Like, this isn't just like going to Petco and buying dog food and leaving. Like, this is a big outing for her, and she's doing great.
Yeah.
And I'm super proud of her, and we're super proud of you.
Yeah, you did a great job. You're still doing a good job. And Grayson, if you're watching, looking forward to seeing you, buddy.
Happy St. Patty's Day, dude. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next Wednesday. And in the meantime,
keep it quirky.
Where'd the pig come from?
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.